Hey folks, welcome back. So today I want to talk about the spectral compressors here, Speccraft, DSEQ3 and Spectral Compressor. And some people ask me, what do I use, why I use it, and what do I recommend? So I want to give you my personal opinion here, what I use and how I use it and why. And also give you maybe some ideas, I don't know. So the spectral compressor I showed you in the last video, so I want to start here with DSEQ3. Because this is something here that I would say is the same as Soothe. So I don't use Soothe, and I know a lot of people use it, but I don't use it. I use this one here because it's not iLok based. I hate iLok for some reason. It also has some neat features on top of that. For instance here, there's some smart AI stuff to figure out the threshold. There's here a custom threshold curve, so you can analyze a track and then, you know, take the spectrum curve or the spectrum shape and put it on another track. That's not possible with Soothe. Here you can do it, and it's also way cheaper. So that's why I use DSEQ3. So if you use Soothe, you can just say this is more or less the same thing, just with more features. You can also see I take out the low end, and this is not an EQ, this curve here. This is the threshold curve, which means there is no threshold for the bass here. And this is here currently on the track on the master. And for the bass sound or for the sub, I usually just use a sine wave, and the sine wave is stable AF, okay? So why do I should put here a compressor on it and mess with the volume of the bass, right? So this is here the low cut. I can disable it, and you can see it wants to instantly pull down here the volume of the sub, and you can see there's a fluctuation. It goes up and down. I don't like it. I want to have a stable bass, so I usually just take it out here and just leave the compressor on the top end or on the mid-range here. And yeah, this kind of works like a compressor, almost. It looks like it because we have here something like a chain link or channel link, not chain link, how it links basically the left to the right channel, or if it processes this individually. There's here attack time, release time, but these two are not in milliseconds, it's in percentage for some reason. So that's what I mean with it's almost a compressor. So I have this here always on very slow attack times and release times, because if you pull down the attack time here, it reacts to every incoming little transient, and it sounds not good. So when I have here a slow attack time, means it only reacts to tonal sounds that are a bit longer. So it only detects or gets in sounds that are longer, not the transients, not the attack times of the kick and so on. So you don't mess with that. You just want to reduce some resonances here in certain frequencies. When we talk about resonances, I have to make basically this kind of disclaimer. These tools here are very dangerous in my opinion. If you don't know what you do and you just put it on and pull this down, right? I see this all the time. People do it on YouTube videos with Soothe. They just pull this down. You remove basically the resonances, which is kind of what you want to do. But if you do it too much, you more or less remove music from the music, because music is resonances. And if you remove all the resonances, there is nothing left to listen to, okay? So this is a bit drastic thing to say, but you know what I mean. You have to really use this in kind of subtle ways, because you can destroy a lot of things pretty easily with this. You just pull this down and your music is basically gone. And now it sounds very spectral-ish. Also, we have here something like selectivity, which is interesting because not every spectral compressor has this. For instance, here the spectral compressor doesn't have this. So the selectivity means when we pull down here the threshold, we can see individual frequencies are getting reduced. This is because we have this here on sharp. If we pull this down to, let's say, soft, then you can see here we have more like a broadband gain reduction. So the selectivity groups certain frequencies together. So if you have this here on sharp, it takes basically every small little frequency, every frequency bin individually and pulls it down, which can make it sound very harsh or very digital fast. And if you have this here on soft, it's more like one band. You have one band and this is one band gain reduction. So it doesn't make any sense mostly. So you want to have this here on a middle ground, so something around 50, I don't know, where you have individual frequencies, but they are kind of grouped together into small little bands. So this is at least how I see it. So if you have, for let's say you have a recording and there's some kind of small little single sound, single frequency in there that you want to reduce, then you can pull this up to sharp and just see if you can tackle or bring this one frequency down. So it's more like for restoration or damage control, but just for musical tasks, and you want to reduce some resonances, so you want to have this here on the middle ground more or less. Then we have something here like a gain reduction strength, which is something like ratio on a compressor, but it's not like the same. Here you have a multiplier, so everything that's above the threshold gets pulled down one time the strength, which is okay. So what goes above the threshold gets pulled down, which is okay. But you can also go up here to 10 times, so everything that's 1 dB above the threshold gets pulled down probably by 10 dB. So it's more or less like a ratio thing. So if you have like harsh frequencies that are just small in size and go barely above the threshold, but you can catch it, and then you want to pull it down heavily, then you can go up to 10 here, but usually you have this around 1 or maybe even less, just to have subtle changes to tame some of the frequencies here in a very subtle way. So that's usually how I use the DSEQ3. There's also something in here like a custom threshold. I also explained this, I think, in a video. It's very easy. At the moment here we have a very straight threshold line, and you can change the line here with the slope, and at the moment here it's 3 dB per octave, which is pink noise. You can go to 0 dB, which is white noise. So you can see you catch more low-end frequencies. You basically tilt or skew here the visualizer or the analyzer kind of. I usually have this at 3 dB per octave, which means the threshold is exactly in a straight line for 3 dB per octave or pink noise, and if I pull down the threshold, I kind of get a nice pink noise balance for the frequencies. You can also go up to 4.5 dB per octave, or I think it goes up to 9 if you only want to tame here the upper frequencies, and the the bass frequencies are never actually touched because it's so tilted. So I have this usually at 3 dB here, which is okay. But you can also go and use a custom curve. So here in the background you can hear there's a track playing, right? And I can say, oh, I really like this distribution of the frequencies. I really like how it sounds. So you can analyze this here with the custom threshold. And just record it for a moment. And when you're done, after a while, I don't know, you just have a new custom threshold here. You can also save this as a preset. But now we have to use here a slope of 0 dB because we have a custom curve, and we enable here the custom curve, and you can see it drastically or heavily reduces here the volume or the frequencies. So to use this custom curve, you have to go up to 30 dB per octave. You have to use a slope here, and we have to enable the custom curve. And now we have here, instead of the straight line of 3 dB per octave, we have basically the frequency distribution of the track we are currently working on. And we just pull this down slightly here, and we make sure that every frequency is basically aligned with this curve we just analyzed. We can also just analyze a different track, a different master track, for instance, and then see what's going on. And this is also something I do with DSEQ3 a lot. I don't use it for resonance reduction all the time. I sometimes just see or look what the spectral compressor here is doing, right? I pull this down and I see there's a lot of, activity here or here, and then I know, oh, there's maybe too much content in this range or in this frequency area. And instead of just having this on the master and letting this work very hardly and very in a very hard way, I just go to the bus or to the individual instrument and just pull it down until it looks nice to my eyes here and it sounds nice to my ears. Of course, that's the most important thing, how it sounds, right? And then I pull down the individual instruments or buses or whatever, and then I just remove this. I don't use it at all. I just use this basically as a visualizer or some type of analyzer to see what's going on actually in my music. So this is how I use the DSEQ3 here. The custom curve is not something I use all the time. Mostly I just leave it here on 3 dB per octave, 3 dB or at pink noise. Have a very slow attack, very slow release, and then pull this slowly down and see what's going on. But here you can see my mix down is pretty flat already. So it tries to take down here every frequency in the same way. So for me, this is pretty fine. I probably don't need to use a spectral compressor here at all. So yeah, that's what I can see at least here for this thing. So my mix down is pretty flat already. So this one had a lot of features already that you don't have in this one here. So this one is free, but it's also pretty raw, and it doesn't lack some features. So I use this most of the times only to compress or to sidechain my bass, my bass bus with the drums, like I showed you in my last video. I don't use the spectral compressor on the master at all because it lacks this kind of selectivity feature here. So when I pull down here the global threshold, it tries to reduce all the little frequency bins individually, which makes it sound very spectral on digital very fast, in my opinion. So you can't group certain frequencies together. It always works on a per bin basis, which is not something I really like. But here you can also kind of low cut here the analyzer by using here, where is it? High frequency roll off. No, you can also you only can make a roll off here at the top end, but the low end is missing. So you can't take out here the bass. You can play around here with the threshold slope and with the curve, right? You can do something like this, but you can't really do here some individual things where you enable your certain bands and say, I want to reduce here some frequencies more than here and so on. So this is not possible here. We have just a straight line, and you can bend the straight line, and that's more or less it. You can also change this, so you can say, oh, only reduce the top end, take the low end out. This is possible, but you have to work around certain problems here. Let's go back here to 3 dB, which is also kind of pink noise. So I like to have the 3 dB thing here just to see what's going on. Here it's more like a compressor. We have also upwards compression, which is kind of missing here. There is no upwards compression. So this is, I try to use this on drums with upwards compression. You can see here it's trying to pull up some frequencies. Oh, I have to switch it on. But it doesn't sound good, right? It sounds very distorted because it tries to push up all the individual frequencies. You can reduce the frequency bins here by using here the window size, but then you have more or less one bin for the frequency range from 0 Hz to 1K, 1 kilohertz, which is just too broad, in my opinion. So you want to at least have here 2K. Let's reduce this here a bit more. Right, this doesn't sound right. It sounds way too digital. So you have to be very, very, very carefully with the spectral compressor on the master if you want to use it there. But you can use it like in the same way as I use here the DSEQ3, just to look for things that it wants to change. So let's go back here. Right, you can see here it wants to take away the bass. But this is pretty fine because this is 3 dB per octave. I don't want to have my track at 3 dB per octave as a slope or as a frequency distribution. It's just a rough guide for me. And here having some bass and some tops in there is pretty fine. I want to have this kind of smiley curve. I don't want to have a flat straight line for 3 dB per octave. So I guess I could dial in here something like a curve, something like this. But in my opinion, it's not versatile enough here, this threshold curve. So I use it more like an indicator or an analyzer, and I use it mostly on drums, if at all. But my main use case for this is actually only sidechaining things. I can show you how this sounds here on the drum bus here for a moment. Do I have it here on here? I have a DSEQ on the drums. Just reducing slightly stuff, as you can see. So let's mute the drums or solo the drums here. So let's put here the spectral compressor on it. So what we can do here is we can use upwards compression, which sounds a bit like OTT. But I would also say it doesn't sound natural. It sounds very digital, and you have to be very carefully with using this. In my use, I try to use this on drums multiple times, but it always sounds so distorted and so artificial in a way. Maybe you can recommend how to use it on drums, but I never found a way to actually make it work for me on drums and sound great. It always have this kind of noisy sound to it. Maybe in a very subtle way. Maybe leave some transients through. And to me, it sounds always better without spec. So I fiddle around with this all the time and try to use it on drums, right? Just to see if I actually miss something. But when I'm done with fiddling with this compressor and I just mute it or disable it, it always sounds better to me. So maybe this is okay if you use very low ratios here for the drums. But if you use it drastically in this kind of way, it always sounds bad in my opinion. Yeah. Maybe if when you mix it, so mix in the dry signal here. Yeah, this could be something. So if you use it in parallel, this could be maybe worth a look if it works for you. But if you use it here on 100% and a lot of ratio for upwards compression, downwards compression, it always sounds too artificial because you have, like I said, all these individual bands measured and compressed and changed in volume, and it doesn't sound right to me. So I don't use it on this type of things, but where I use it is here on the bass bus, right? Like in my last video, the drums coming in with sidechain compression here, and then ducking basically the drum bus to the bass bus, and it reduces here for the kick drum, the bass, the sub, and for the snare drum, which is just a clap or a white noise burst here at the top end from the bass. So that's how I use it usually. And also here, if you just want to reduce the bass, you just have to use a different slope here, something like this, and then you have to change here the threshold. So it's a bit fiddly here, but it works. So let's go back here to my initial thing, 3 dB, something like this. Yeah. And here you can see I have pretty fast release time. It's almost audio rate because I really want to only get the kick out of the bass, more or less. Also attack is here 0 ms, which is very fast, and it works for me. It sounds okay. So it doesn't change the sound too much. It just really removes the bass or the kick frequencies from the bass frequencies when they occur. So that's how I use the Spectral Compressor most of the times. Like I said, I try to use it on drums sometimes. Maybe as a style, if you like the style of having it sound very digital and very dubstepy or whatever, then it can be something. I also try to use it on mid-range basses, on these type of neuro bass sounds, and it also can be useful there if you just want to push up or upwards compress the bass sounds with this. But yeah, it has a certain sound to it. Then we have here on the master, we have here the Speccraft. So this one is kind of a middle ground. So it kind of works like a compressor because we have here a real ratio setting, even though it's also in percentage. We have here attack times, release times in milliseconds. So you can say really here, I'm working at 174 BPM and 116 note is probably around 88 milliseconds and 1/8 note is 170 ms, right? You can really tweak in the release times here if you want to. You can also leave some attacks through, some transients through. But here also we have something like a threshold. We can pull this down, and then we have here a Q, and we have a ratio. And I have to see why this is not working at the moment. The ratio is up. Maybe it's disabled. I don't know what I did there. Speccraft. Okay, so here probably I reduced the range probably. So yeah, you can see here it reduces already frequencies. We have also here a threshold. This threshold is, I think, also 3 dB per octave. I don't know if you can change this, but there is here something like profiler. You can record basically other tracks, and then you have a changed threshold curve. Let's capture this here for a moment. It makes no sense. I just capture here more or less the same frequency curve of this track, but you can just put it on another track and then capture this thing. You can see that the threshold changed more or less in a different curve, and then you can pull it down, and everything that goes above this line then gets pulled down. So yeah, this is possible here. The ratio also a bit lower, so we don't want to reduce too much. So here, instead of having this, what's the name, the EQ, the selectivity, right? Here it's called Q. So if you have this at 0%, you have more like broad frequency changes, and if you have this all the way up to 100%, you have individual frequencies getting pulled down. So this is possible, but here they also added some adaptive compensations, right? So we have the dynamics, and the idea here is when you reduce a lot of individual frequencies here, right? You also reduce kind of the overall gain of this frequency area, right? Right, so the hi-hats become quieter. You reduce, of course, a lot of individual frequencies, but it gets quieter. So here they have some adaptive things. So with dynamics, you can see here, they kind of want to add back in some broad EQ changes, right? So let's pull this all the way up. You can see here. So it reduces individual frequencies, but it pushes up broader changes. So it makes basically an upwards compression here with this, just to bring back the volume. And this is very helpful sometimes. And you can change here, of course, the dynamics, the format, treble. So you have a treble here, you add more top end. But again, you want to use this in a very subtle way. It sounds very artificial, very fast. But I really like the idea of this one here, and I use it more and more in certain situations because it's so versatile that you can use here this curve and you have this adaptive change. With the DSEQ sometimes if I reduce too much stuff here, right, in the top end, I have to add an EQ then here after DSEQ and say, oh, bring back actually here the top end a bit, right? So with Speccraft, you have this basically in one plugin. But it more or less works in the same way as all of the other things. It's just quality of life. And it has maybe a different sound to it. And it's also that you have here this profiling thing, right? You can see I already cloned some curves from different productions just to pull this down and see where I have too much content in my mix down, and then push it up and, you know, correct it on the bus or maybe on the individual instruments. So also here I use this sometimes just as a visualizer to see what's going on, instead of having this on the master and just work heavily and reduce the gain of certain individual frequencies. So yeah, this is Speccraft. I think this is pretty expensive, 150 bucks or something like this. So you don't have to use it. It's just quality of life. It does some nice things. This one here is a bit cheaper. I'm not sure how much this is. And this other one here, the Spectral Compressor, is completely free and open source. And I think it's also the only one that works under Linux. But here you have to be very carefully with this, right? It lacks some quality of life things, and you have to be aware that you really work on all these individual frequency bins all the time, and it makes it very harsh or digital very fast. And yeah, like I said in the beginning, really try to use this in subtle ways. You can destroy your music with this. I know a lot of people like to use Soothe on more or less everything. I watch sometimes here these dubstep videos, color-based producers, and they just pull down heavily and remove everything until everything's completely flat and digital. And it's also, I get it, it's the sound, it's the aesthetics of this kind of genre, but if you do other music, sometimes drum and bass here, you want to have some resonances, right? You want to have some dirt, you want to have some overlaps. You want to have these sounds glued together in a way. So if you overdo this, you make these sounds stand out, transparent, or you single out certain sounds and you miss basically the glue. So you want to have the dirt. The dirt makes the music interesting, in my opinion. And I get it, I was at this point also in my life, I thought, oh nice, now we have the Spectral Compressor, I just pull this down, I have my curve I want to have, I pull this down, everything sounds fine, I don't need to mix my tunes anymore, I just have this on the master and call it a day. Sadly, this is not how it works. If you have a nice mix down, if you have a nice, well-balanced mix down and you work on these individual tracks and single out certain frequencies, it always sounds better and it always sounds more punchy, in my opinion, than having this here on the master and just put a mask with the same settings on every frequency. It just doesn't sound right, in my opinion. So try to use these very carefully. If you produce color bass, then I can't help you. That's your that's your fate. Yeah, I don't want to diss anyone. It's just, you know, it's part of the sound. I get it. So yeah, this is more or less my video about these type of processors. I hope it helps in a way. I'm not sure. Let me know what you think. Do you use any of these compressors or have any experiences? Maybe I got something wrong in this video. Let me know in the comments down below. I am open for everything. If you insult me, I just delete the comment and call it a day, okay? Yeah, that's it. I want to work on this track here today. I just started this, so that's it for the day. Thanks for watching. Leave a like, leave a subscription. Let me know what you think. See you in the next video. Bye.